Hi, I'm Rob Vanstone. I'm here, well, not here, socially distanced by a few kilometers from Murray McCormick, who's at his East Regina estate in one of his 17 or 18 rooms that he has in his house.
Sure.
Um, we're here to talk about the Canadian Football League, such to the extent that there is anything to talk about in the Canadian Football League. I frankly was expecting something tangible, something to hang our hats on from yesterday. But as far as Randy Ambrosie's State of the League town hall, but there really wasn't much except for hype and hope and talk about vaccines. Mur,
Yeah, we'll talk
this could
about.
be a short. This could be a short podcast. Did you derive anything from it or
I was
glean anything from it other than it was raw without without a lot of specifics or anything really concrete?
I was underwhelmed, and I know the CFL kind of pumped it up a bit, saying he was going to talk about the future of the league and the state of the league, and I didn't think he could say much anyway, because really no one can say anything definitive now. But I was hoping Randy would come out and say something. We're going to have a 2021 season. Here's the schedule, which he did. Here's the reasons why we can go ahead. Here's the reasons why we can't. And he didn't really even do any of that. I found the vaccine stuff interesting in that he said Monday was an omen for him when they talked about this new vaccine coming from
Moderna.
Moderna. And I wondered, well, if that hadn't happened, what would we have had talked about on Monday if the vaccine overtook everything and a part of his plan? So I wondered a little bit about that. The vaccines are exciting news, and I think we need exciting news at this time. But boy, to hinge your whole season on the two vaccines is actually working and whatever it's going to take to get them to work, it seems to be a bit of a pipe dream to me. And yeah, I was just underwhelmed. And you and I kind of texted back and forth going, boy, this really isn't a lot of meat to this on this bone other than Randy trying to pump fans up, which is kind of his gig, eh? That's what he does. He's very good at pumping fans up. You and I've both been to Randy town halls and seen what he does. But yeah, it was underwhelming, and I don't know what. Still, lots of people wrote about it, and I read a lot of the stories. Say a lot of them dealt with the hope and the hype and hoping that something happens. But realistically, who knows what's ever going to happen, Rob? We don't know.
Yeah,
Nobody knows either.
very quickly, about 5 minutes into it, I realized there's not going to be anything here. And at that point, started to think of jokes because I realized I wasn't going to be able to hang my column on anything that really was solid. So I might as well just resort to the schlock right away. And that wasn't my hope or my intention, but it ended up being the reality. And now it's day two of CFL or Grey Cup Unite, and there really isn't much to. If there was any momentum, I don't. There's no momentum to be
No.
from what happened yesterday or on Monday because it was just a lot of emptiness. And I realize there's only so much you can say, and I realize there's only so much you can control, and he's beholden to to the to the league's governors.
Yeah.
But was there any evidence of a plan? There was
No.
just nothing. It was absolute nothingness. It's fine to say that there's a schedule coming out, but that doesn't mean much. That can be amended and amended and amended. Uh, there's He's right about the vaccine. That's going to dictate a lot of what happens. But I thought what was really telling was I keep trying to straighten my glasses because they're never straight. Um, I think what was really telling was I listened to him on CKRM Sports Cage on Monday with Derek Taylor, and Derek asked him point blank, if there's no fans in seats, can you play or will you play? Something to that effect. And he dodged the question. And
Yeah.
Derek, to his credit, followed up by saying, okay, but he pretty much re-asked the question. And again,
Yeah.
he dodged it. He's got to be the most elusive former offensive lineman in CFL history.
I found it interesting too in the town hall. People asked about Halifax, and some of the questions are
Who
just went,
cares?
exactly. Who cares about Halifax? I don't care how rosy a picture Randy paints. Halifax is not going to have the money to build a stadium, and everyone is against it right now. Not everyone. I'm not 100%. totally versed on the Halifax situation. So if people are going to jump down my throat, give me a break. I live in Regina, but they're not building a stadium. No one has money to build stadiums right now. So
At this point, they want to get the CFL as it currently exists going again. That's what the concern is. Anything about Halifax, etc., is purely tangential.
even the schedule,
Can they field teams in June, July, August, September? If so, how? Are there plans for a hub city? He talked about various alternatives that they have, but didn't share any of them.
when I had
So
my sorry,
it was really a pretty much a waste of time.
I had a 7 minute window to talk to Randy with a hard stop at the end because he was going on CKRM. And I asked him about the questions about, ticket sales and gate revenue. And he didn't, same thing, he didn't really answer the questions. Maybe I didn't have time to ask a follow up. And stuff happens like that sometimes in the media. But I was underwhelmed by the whole thing. So what do we do now for the rest of this off season? Do we kind of go, yeah, this might be season, there might not, or we just keep grinding away? I just like to say something about the schedule because I'm off beat here a little bit, but we're of the generation when the schedule used to come out in March and even later than that. Remember those days? So
Yeah.
it was when the schedule came out, knowing people had to plan weddings and all sorts of events around the summer. The schedule coming out was an event. It was something that, and I, having had two daughters who got married during football seasons, trying to schedule your lives around a football season and halls and stuff. It was a big deal back in the day. So when they started coming out with the schedule in December, I don't think people realized the impact it had and how much smarter it was to do that. But to put this schedule out when it will come out, will they do it during Grey Cup Unite week? Who knows? Maybe a week after that. But it's not, as you said, it's not something that's written in stone. It's just a schedule, and training camps may start in May, and they,
I'll be interested to see what dates they have. Will it just be a normal schedule? If so, I'd like to see some meat behind it, such as, okay, here's the schedule, and regardless of the circumstances, we're going to find a way to start the regular season on June, what have you, or July, what have you, or August, September, whatever the blueprint may be. Just to put out a schedule for the sake of doing so, which would seem to be where this is going, it's more of a symbolic gesture than anything that you can really hang your hat on, unless there's some oomph behind it. And given everything we heard yesterday, I really question that. And Randy Ambrosie's a good man, and he's taken a lot of heat, and it's a really tough time to come into. He's in year 3 of his commissionership, and his commissioners all over the place are having to deal with new realities, and so I mean, I think in some cases he's taken more heat than he should have, considering the circumstances and considering the fact that it's the league's governors that ultimately drive the vehicle. But all that being said, especially with all the hype leading up to Grey Cup Unite, and there, maybe it was just a faulty assumption, but I was led to believe there would be something
I don't think it's a faulty assumption.
out of yesterday's thing, and there really wasn't.
And it was kind of weird too, because we're jumping on this one. Holding it in the middle of the afternoon. Like, this isn't like real Grey Cup week when fans take holidays and they have nothing but time during the day. Why wasn't it at night when it would have been more convenient or more accessible to fans? I know it's online and stuff, everything's there. And Chris O'Leary did a great Q&A with Randy on CFL.ca shortly right after. So, but Grey Cup stuff kind of happens at night. So it's kind of unfair to fans. I mean, at 3 o'clock in the hour, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, our time, to go online to see this state of the line when town hall, when maybe it should have been at night. Might have been more. But
I think one thing that they have to realize is that if they want to get their name out there, and if they want to not be out of sight, out of mind, these type of things can't be a one-off. Although, given what we learned from yesterday's thing, maybe I sound contradictory to advocate that there should be more. But they got to keep themselves in the public eye, not just for 1 week, but they got to keep reminding people that they're around. And yes, everybody with an interest in sports pretty much knows that there's a Canadian Football League, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a reason that Coke still advertises. There's a reason why Nike still advertises and McDonald's still advertises. People know that they're there, but they don't want to lose the foothold that they have. And they keep emphasizing their presence, and it's burned into your brain that there's a McDonald's out there. I was watching Jay and Dan last night, and they were leading with McDonald's references. So they can't. The league has to realize that if you want to engage people, you just can't have a week like this, such as it is, and decide, okay, now we've reasserted ourselves. We're going to go back into hibernation. I think there just needs to be
Excuse
an
me.
overall spirit of more inclusiveness and more engagement with the media, with the fans, everybody. They've got to keep pushing this, and they've got to give people something that's a little more substantial than what we heard on Monday. That's
Well,
got to be the emphasis. They can't. I mean, Randy Ambrosi does these sessions. He'll do media blitzes every now and then, but then when something's happening with the collective bargaining agreement, when something's happening with, is there going to be a season? There's He's virtually impossible to get a hold of. So I think they need to stop picking their spots too.
but a little bit of what is he going to say? Like, we have to pick our spots. I don't know what he's going to come out and say because he really can't say anything definitive. So I agree with you. They have to get their brand out there, but the CFL is, they're short of staff too. They're dealing with everything else. So I don't know what they can do to sell their game
Well,
when they
everybody's got
aren't
a
playing
phone.
any
I mean,
games.
it's pretty easy to get in
Yeah,
touch with people, you know.
but
We haven't actually worked together in the same office since February, and here we are doing a podcast. It's
yeah,
not, given the communications tools that are out there, it's not very hard to hook people up these days. And I get the feeling that this is going to be a week where they think, okay, we've thrown these crumbs out there. Now we're just going to go back into hibernation for a few months, and I don't think that's constructive. I think you got to give people something, and you got to give them something consistently. And if not that, I don't know what purpose this week is going to serve.
well, it kind of gets us back in the Grey Cup mood in a sense. I'm not excited about a lot of the things. A lot of the things are all scrum based and conference call based. So getting anything new and fresh is going to be tough for any member of the media, which is my complaining. So don't even worry about that. But I'll give them a little bit of credit for putting this together. I think they, just let the Grey Cup go by like Labor Day went by and Thanksgiving went by without even a murmur from the CFL was concerning and wondering what are they doing? Why are they letting these opportunities when they're front and center? So I think, can we give them credit for that, for at least
It's good that they've done it.
elevating the
I mean,
profile
they've
a
got
little bit?
themselves out there. I just think they've got to keep pushing it, and
Yeah.
they've got to start delivering something because there's a voracious appetite for this. This league's got a pretty. It's not the size of fan base they'd want because otherwise they'd have better financials, but they've still got a pretty devoted fan base that just wants something to to indicate that okay, there's promise here, and I didn't really get that yesterday.
Do you think it's fair that comparisons are being made to the NHL and Major League Baseball and these played in bubbles and been successful to compare that to the CFL, which has a minuscule amount of money compared to those big leagues? And people say, oh, they should have had the bubble. And I know it's not technically correct to say if we'd been in Winnipeg right now for a bubble, I think we'd all be coming home. I don't think we'd get by what would be going on with that. But is it fair to compare that the NHL and Major League Baseball and NFL are all NBA got away with it and the CFL didn't? Is it a
They've
fair
got TV
comparison?
contracts. I mean, the current CFL TV contract with TSN is very lucrative by CFL standards, but
Yeah.
tip money by NBA, NFL standards. Um, I mean, the dynamics, the whole of the enterprises are entirely different. But I look at something like the Canadian League Basketball League, and they were able to make a go of it
Yeah.
in an abbreviated form this year. There are smaller sporting federations that did find a way. Now, housing a basketball league and housing a football league are two different
Yeah.
scales, but um, it ultimately came down to will, and there were enough affluent people in the Canadian Football League. If they wanted to make a go of it and bite the bullet financially, they could have had a season. But ultimately, I don't think it's entirely accurate to say that because the federal government didn't come through with money,
Yeah.
uh, the Canadian Football League didn't have a 2020 season, and that's the federal government's fault. That was part of the equation. But ultimately, it was the CFL governor's decision to say, okay, well, we're not going to be getting this federal money. Do we want to go ahead? And it was ultimately the Canadian Football League that said no. And we don't see the financials. 6 of the 9 teams are privately owned, so they don't open the books. But what would it have cost them to make a go of it on their own? Well, probably about $30 million or a little more than $3 million per team, and
which I think is
that
low.
was ultimately their decision. And what are the costs of not proceeding? I didn't question it at the time, so maybe I shouldn't question it now. But they let themselves go. They put themselves in this position to the extent that they said we can't do it by ourselves.
And they can't. I don't think they can. I don't think they can do. I'm not even 100% sure they can do 2021 by themselves. I know Randy mentioned a lot of season ticket holders have left their money with the teams, which gives them, does that give them money to get through this season, or does that give them money to get through next season? Where does that money sort of help them out? Because they still, and Craig, they still have expenses. Just because
there's still payrolls.
Football, there's still payrolls. There's still, I can't think of anything else but payrolls.
Well, there's still some form of scouting.
There's still something.
There's still some form of administration that needs to be done, even though there's been layoffs and there's been rollbacks in salaries. Those bills still need to be paid.
Like merchandise.
Even if you look at the Rough Riders, quarters over at Mosaic Stadium, they're still paying for that office space.
Yep, and they still have rent at Mosaic Stadium. That still goes on.
So
they're just like regular people in that world.
Well, let's play a guessing game here, Mur, and that's all it is at this point.
Guess your weight.
What do you? I'm pleased to do that now. It was 168.6 as of Friday. I was looking at one of our older podcasts the other day, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is new. What do you think is going to happen? What will 2021 be like? I'm not sure I know what Friday is going to be like, or even later this afternoon. But
it's funny too, because I haven't even had that question asked recently. Like, it's just kind of moved off to the side. Like before, when the season was going to be canceled, it was a regular thing. What do you ever be? Hi, how you doing? How your groceries doing? How do you think it's going to be a season? Like everywhere I went, I was asked about 2020. I don't get asked about 2021 very often now. It just seems to have gone. And so, where do I think it's going to go? In my mind, I'm not optimistic. As optimistic as Randy about 2021. I still think we're going to be dealing with COVID. I still think we're going to have to prove that fans are actually going to come back to stadiums. I still think we have to prove, if they do, can the CFL survive with 50 fans? I don't know how many fans will be in the stands. So I wish I could say, yeah, I'm not very optimistic. I need to see some proof that the CFL has a business model that allows them to have a season. And that was another thing we didn't get yesterday, was any sort of this business model that's been promised about all these things they're working on. And we didn't get any indication that they have a business model in place that's going to keep working. So I know you put me on the spot.
Sorry, Mark, go ahead.
You put me on the spot. What do you think?
A lot of it will be contingent, and maybe you can answer this question better than I, because you were on the conference call with the CFL Players Association yesterday. A lot of it will depend on what accommodations can be made with the players, because I don't think you can take the business model that they were going to carry into the 2020 season and think that it's going to work in 2021, considering there's going to be attendance issues. Even if they can put on a season that's with no social distancing and everything's fine and COVID has magically disappeared and the vaccine has been distributed, etc. Even if they have an optimal situation come June of 2021, a lot of people have taken financial hits, and football tickets aren't going to be affordable for some people who used to automatically purchase them. I think that's a fair assumption. So is there going to be a CFL business model that takes into account the realities of 2021? And I think the one certainty we can talk about is that fans, sponsors aren't going to have the same resources for Canadian professional football that they did in the past. They may eventually get back to that point, but for 2021, that's going to be, I think it's not really a reach to say that's going to be the case. So what accommodations can be made with the Players Association? Because expenses have to go down, and one of those expenses is player salaries. The cap's 5.3, or was to be 5.3 million or so this year. Uh, can that be reduced? Will the players stand for it? The players of I could see why they would be steadfast there, because that's not a really substantial percentage of the overall
Yes.
expenses. So what about team infrastructures, team the operations as a whole, etc. So I think there will be a season. I think they'll be able to make it go to some extent. Will it be 18 games? Good question. Will it be? What will the average attendances be? Good question. I think they'll be able to cobble something together, but I don't think it'll resemble the seasons to which we have become accustomed. Nor do I think the salaries will be reminiscent of what they have been in recent years. I'm not really confident there'll be an 18 game season. Maybe they can make a go with a 12 game season. I think there'll be something. There has to be something.
Well, Randy wants to get the players back on the field. He does, and he wants to get them making money. But the players listening last night, they kind of ducked through danced around the questions about what they'd be willing to do with salaries, which I guess in negotiations that's part of the game. But the players want to make money, but how many players want to come back? That's when we were talking to Solomon Aluminium,
Aluminium.
Aluminium. The players have the same questions they did when the season went down. Like, is there going to be a 2021 season, and where they're going to be, and what they're going to do? So the questions remain the same. They just moved it up to 2021. So I don't know how much the players are going to be willing to take salary cap or whatever they're going to do, but realistically, they're going to have to take a salary cut. I think, even though their percentage, and they mentioned last night, it's like 25% of their revenue is based on the expenses are based on player salaries, kind of about that. But the players are going, if they want to play football, they can't have a $700,000 quarterback. It doesn't
And the
happen.
thing
I
is,
don't even know if
always be
$400,000
people who
quarterback.
will play.
Yeah,
They may not be people who are recognizable to a lot of fans, but you can always find players.
yeah,
Whether they're any good or not is the other issue. But if the simple purpose is getting on the field, you'll be able to find enough players who will play for $20,000 a year if you want.
yeah,
Whether the product is worth watching, that's another issue. But the players possess some leverage, but only to a point.
yeah. So, and right now, what they're all trying to find jobs. They're all, what kind of shape are they going to be? Like, professional athletes will be in good shape. Like, that's their job. They know these aren't college kids who maybe sit at home and eat pizza on the couch. These guys know they got to work out to keep their job. So I think they'll be in shape for that. As I say, I don't know what kind of players going to be. Then, who knows? Is the border ever going to open in our lifetime again? Maybe when Joe Biden Joe Biden is elected president. But he'll change that world will change. But there's so many uncertainties right now, and I think maybe coming to the end of this. There's so many uncertainties that we really didn't get any certainties yesterday about
Well,
what might
I
be
think we're
ahead.
facing a bit of the same problem that Randy Ambrosie did, and part of it is because of the nature of the announcement, which didn't really give us anything solid. But I can certainly relate to the dilemmas that the Randy Ambrosie and the governors face, because how do you make that call right now? I would have liked to have, or at least heard something about, okay, here's plan A, plan B, plan C. I don't
Yeah,
think it's unrealistic to, especially in light of the times in which we live, to say, okay, this is our utopian situation, this is our bare bones situation. Spell it out a little bit, but without it, in the absence of that, we're in the same situation I think a lot of people are, where we're talking speculatively as opposed to with a lot of foundation behind what we're saying. Yeah, we've managed to ramble on for more than 20 minutes.
yeah. We imagine we're going to hit 25 pretty
What
soon.
else are sports writers supposed to do these
Yeah,
days?
this is our job. We kind of, we're doing. That's what I'll say. People wonder what sports writers are doing right now. There's a lot of sports writers covering COVID. There's sports writers covering City Hall, as I'm helping to do. There's sports writers like Greg Harder's doing business stories. We've all kind of had, and I think the word was good. I never thought I'd have to use it in my lifetime. Pivot to find things to do, and we just don't have football. So it's been an interesting off season for guys like you and I. You're writing a COVID column, and I see different guys writing different kind of things. So sports writers are keeping busy, but we've pivoted to another world, and that's the reality of it. And we understand what other people are going through, and that's kind of a rant and ramble. But people wonder what I do. They wonder what you do all day, and we find stories to write. It doesn't matter what it's about. It's their stories, and we write about them.
At heart, though, I mean, we love this league. I don't think
Mhm.
it's a breach of objectivity to assert that. I mean, I was going to Rider games before, since predating my formal arrival. Mom took me to games in 1963 when she was pregnant. I've grown up with it. I love it. I've written books about it. I've attended Grey Cups, not vocationally, but recreationally.
Mhm.
Um, I I miss it. I've missed it for several months, and maybe come Sunday, you can say, okay, the season that would have been is no longer would no longer be on the calendar. Now we can just treat it like a normal off season, to the extent that anything is normal these days. Okay, we missed out on a lot, but that period on our lives is now gone. Let's look forward and feel optimistic, and think down the road to June as we normally would, and at the end of November. And oh, will it be nice to see a football game again? I've said this a few times, Burr, but I'll never be dismissive of preseason Canadian football again.
Oh,
I
sure
usually
you
go
will.
there
That's
thinking,
when you're
oh, this is going to be terrible. It's going to go on for 4 hours, and we're not going to know who any of these guys are, and it's going to be ragged. Um, Next time I go to Mosaic Stadium, and it was a year ago today, as we record this on November 17th, it
yeah.
was a year ago today that the Rough Riders last played a game. That 2013 loss to Winnipeg in the West Final last year. Next time I go into that Mosaic Stadium press box, I will sit there, and I will get there as soon as it opens, and I will sit there and I will savor it, and I will feel so good about it. Maybe that's a reward at the end of all this. So we've dealt with sport deprivation and football deprivation for such a prolonged period now, and the COVID numbers are only getting worse. But one day it will it will feel better than ever to go to a Canadian Football League game that once upon a time may have been dismissed as something insignificant, whether it's a preseason game or even a Rough Riders green and white game.
Yeah. I think it's
That'll be
in your
sweet.
DNA though to rag on preseason games, Rob. I don't know if you'll quite be able to ever get back to enjoying preseason, but I think we'll enjoy any type of football from now on, and hopefully
Absolutely.
so. So just think one last stop, like we would have been right now, we'd probably be getting up if it wasn't for COVID, wondering when's the last time I slept for 4 straight hours, and be looking at probably would have been coaches' press conferences this morning, I would bet, or around there. Or no, the teams are traveling
Tuesday,
today.
teams would usually arrive on
Yeah,
Tuesday.
rival day today, and then tomorrow press conferences, and then
Perhaps the Rough Riders would have had far to go.
yeah, would have been
That's the
yeah,
other thing. I mean, this team was built for
for
this
this,
year.
yeah,
You look at the composition of the roster, go through the Riders roster on Riderville.com, and there's a lot of players there 30 and over. And that's an old age for an advanced age for a football player, but as it was shown in 2013, you can win a Grey Cup with a lot of players who are
yep,
well into their careers. But now they've lost a full year without playing. What's the Riders roster going to look like? And this is an entirely different discussion. What's the Rough Riders roster going to look like next year, considering that they've got tons of players at or beyond 30, and a lot of players will be entering free agency without even having played this year.
mm,
Uh, the Rough Rider team we see in 2021, if there is one, will be Cody Fajardo and who else?
who else? Yeah,
And that'll be an adjustment as well, because um, who knows what the consequences will be of a lot of key players having lost a year. They haven't had that wear and tear added. They haven't added any miles to the or kilometers to the odometer, but it's still a year that's gone. And they were built for 2021, 2020. I presume they're going to have a comparable demographic for 2022 when the Grey Cup is here. But what is 2021 going to look like? Is it going to be a year like 2012, where okay, they know they've got the Grey Cup the next year, they're going to start laying the foundation, or can they even do that given the prevalence of one-year contracts, which did not exist in
yeah,
2012 when Brendan Taman started making plans for the next year? But I think that's another podcast as opposed
that's
to
another podcast. So we'll start that one. Maybe come back in February, hopefully.
or on Friday if the schedule or thereabouts if the schedule looks promising. Anyway, um, Murr, I'd like to thank you for your time today, even though there's too much Steelers stuff in the background.
A
I
little
guess you
bit,
can
kind
go
of.
about being undefeated.
Yes, we are, but I can be proud of them. They're having a great season. So if anybody wants to see any Steelers stuff, give me a call, and I'll take them on a virtual tour of a lot of Steelers stuff.
And here I am cheering for the Denver Broncos. They're 3-6 for the fourth consecutive year. Consistency is everything.
And your cupboard looks as bare as their chances.
That's their playbook in the background.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us.
Okay,
We'll do these again as circumstances warrant. For the undefeated Murray McCormick, I'm the 3-6 Rob Vanstone, and we hope to talk to you soon. Take care.